Well, hello, friends. Today is Friday, and I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm going to discuss with you the surprising connection between Nikola Tesla and Donald Trump. Don't go away. Thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate you guys. Subscribe to this channel if you are new. Nikola Tesla is somebody I don't think anybody really needs any introduction on him. He's one of the most famous quote-unquote scientists of our day, and really probably one of the most underappreciated scientists. But the truth about Tesla that nobody really wants to talk about is that Nikola Tesla was not a quote-unquote scientist. The man was actually an occultist. He accidentally came upon some scientific discoveries as he was doing more and more occult rituals and things that he was trying to understand. And we explain all that in Third Adam 4, which is available for free on our YouTube channel. Please go take the time to go check that out. It actually is if you just go to our channel, it's the #1 top video right there. We've got it set there. Third Adam 4, The Road to Shambhala. But if you want to find the thumbnail, it's got a Knight Templar on it. It's a blue thumbnail there on our channel. So, let me just tell you, just sum this up for you real quick. Nikola Tesla, I think, made some amazing discoveries, probably some very dangerous discoveries in his search of occult power and understanding and harnessing what he called free energy, which is what others call the God particle, which is called many different things, the chi, the prana, which is Eastern mysticism and occultism. That is what the occult is. The occult is to try to discover and find what the Bible calls the breath of life. If you remember in the book of Genesis, how God breathed into Adam the breath of life, they're trying to figure out what that is and try to isolate it and use it and control it so they can live forever and become their own gods. And that's what they want. That's the whole point, is to become their own God, which is exactly what what Eve was promised by Lucifer in the Garden of Eden. So this is the nefarious nature of all this stuff, and this is the type of stuff that they're very cryptic about. They don't actually explain it to you, but that's what the occult is. These people want to find this breath of life, and it takes many different names: chi, prana, orgone, all kinds of things like that, and isolate it, find it, and maybe even inject it into their body or absorb it or eat it or whatever, so that they can use it to live forever. That's basically it, and that's what Nikola Tesla was after. That's what he was trying to do, and he accidentally discovered a few things along the way. So, but there's a couple things I want to give you to, if you, and this is kind of complex, but if you compare and contrast Third Adam 3, which is Rise of the Divine Feminine, the feminine energy and that kind of stuff right there, you'll find that Tesla really was into the divine feminine. And I want to read this to you. This is a quote of his. "It is clear to any trained observer, even to the sociological untrained, that a new attitude towards sex discrimination has come upon over the world through the centuries, receiving an abrupt stimulus just before and after the World War. This struggle of the human female towards sex equality will end in a new sex order with the female as superior." That's the rise of the divine feminine. This is what Tesla was into. The modern woman who anticipates in merely superficial phenomena the advancement of her sex is but a surface symptom of something deeper and more potent fermenting in the bosom of the race. It is not in the shallow physical limitation of men that women will assert first their equality and later their superiority, but in the awakening of the intellect of women. And so basically this whole idea, there's buzz phrases here, in the bosom of the race. That's the dormant spirit energy that they claim lays there. But then also he says the awakening of the intellect of the woman. That's the rise of the divine feminine. And then also he had some very communistic views. And Tesla, if you'll notice, if you ever get around and you see symbolism of bees, that actually is an occultic thing. I mean, you'll notice that if you kind of observe carefully some things. But Tesla talked about the bee being the perfect society, like a communistic society. He says right here that the center of all bee life is the queen. She dominates the hive not through her hereditary right, for any egg may be hatched into a reigning queen, but because she is the womb of this insect race. They are the vast desexualized armies of workers whose sole aim and happiness in life is hard work. It is the perfection of communism, of socialized cooperative life, wherein all things, including the young, are the property and concern of all. That's just straight up communism is what that is. And but I want you to understand this. I'm throwing this out there for a purpose, okay? The vast desexualized armies of workers. Now, we told you in 3 Adam 3 towards the very end about the Shiva Shakti and how that they believe that God divided Adam from Eve, and that Adam before God divided a gender, like was some androgynous being, and he was like the perfect being. And in the minds of these people, now you're a Christian audience, so you don't think this way, but these people do. In the minds of these people, the perfect being is an androgynous one, and all like every step of consciousness in the occult, every step of consciousness towards a higher plane of spiritual evolution, they become less male and female and more of a, I guess, androgynous being. That's what they teach. That's what they think. And so I personally, and just my observation, I think that there's a lot going on in society today to try to push that agenda. A lot of different angles of that. I think that in the food supply, I mean, if you just go Google and go look up the testosterone levels in the average male today, you will realize that those young men who got off those boats to storm Normandy in France fighting against the Germans, they had at least twice the testosterone as the average 19 and 20-year-old does today. At least twice. So what's the deal with the plummeting testosterone levels? Well, I think it's a lot of different things. I mean, we've become soft as a society. Women are running society. I think there's plastics in the food. I mean, you know, everything we have today comes these little plastic things that we eat, and I think that hinders that. So is there some sort of working, systematized agenda to make females masculine and make men feminine? Oh, I think so. I think that's completely self-evident. I don't even know if I have to really work hard to show that to you. But we talked about that right at the end of 3 Adam 3, and I showed you the rebus. Now I want to pull this up to you. To the occultist people, this is the ultimate being. And there's different examples of this. There's the Baphomet, and then there's this. Rebus, R-E-B-I-S, stands for Ra be Isis and Isis be Ra. You can read it forward, you can read it backwards. It is an androgynous, dualistic being. And this, in their mind, this is what Adam was before God divided Eve from Adam. Now, of course, that's heresy, but that's how these people think. Now, I want to show this to you here. And I just want to, let me jump from all this to Donald Trump and Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was an occultist, no doubt. People debate the discoveries that he made, where he had like a death ray of particle beams. I personally think that he broke into the third realm a whole lot farther than deeper than we realize. And what happened was that the federal government took all his information somewhere around World War II-ish, somewhere in that time, and they just absorbed it upon his death. They took it all, went through it, and of course the federal government does not have a good track record with being forthright with the American people. They gave it to a man named, who was an MIT professor, to look at it, named John Trump. And John Trump said that there's nothing here. There's nothing to this, and gave it back to the federal government. It went into an archive somewhere. We've not seen it since then. John Trump was the uncle of Donald Trump. And I need to do a video on it someday. I think I will. Donald Trump, actually, he's not a Christian. Everybody knows that. He actually is what's called a hypnotist, a suggestive hypnotist. His pastor is that he looks to and claims that this is the man of God that I follow is Norman Vincent Peale. Norman Vincent Peale is the guy who does the Power of Positive Thinking, and he was actually involved in the Billy Graham Crusades. And the power of positive thinking, we talk about this in 3rd Adam 4, is a form of manifestation. It is an occultic term. It is a New Age concept. Guys like Tony Robbins teach this. The man who did the Dilbert comics, he does all that. And so we need to do a video on that someday. But the surprising connection between Nikola Tesla and Donald Trump is that his uncle was the MIT professor that said, told the American public there's nothing here. I think there was something there. Is it any coincidence maybe that Elon Musk, who owns the company called Tesla, is one of the biggest supporters of Donald Trump? I don't know. There's a lot of weird things going to be happening in the near future. Donald Trump is declassifying the Martin Luther King files, the RFK, and the JFK files. And I think what you're going to find in there, you're going to find that, MLK was not what you think he was. There's a lot of nefarious stuff about that man. The man is not going to be viewed as the hero that he is viewed as now by the American public after that. And then the JFK files and the RFK files, you're going to find out that there's some very nefarious things there, that JFK basically was unalived because of his opposition to central banks and the Federal Reserve. And there might be some Mossad involvement in there as well. I don't know. We'll find out together. But let me play this for you just to conclude this video. I want to play a few minutes of 3rd Adam 4, where we go through and explain to you all the things that Tesla was into. We go into CERN. We go into all that just from a research perspective. And I want to, somebody's got to talk about this stuff. Somebody's got to explain this stuff. And it may as well be a Bible-believing Christian who explains it to you. Somebody who's a part of a local church who's got some good doctrine, and that's the role we're trying to play in this grand scheme of things right now. So let's play that now at this time, and God bless you. Subscribe to this channel if you're new, and enjoy this next segment. Now, there also are people in the world today that claim that they are practicing science, but really they're practicing the occult, and there are several examples of this. The first one is CERN in Switzerland. CERN is the largest particle physics laboratory in the world and site of the Large Hadron Collider, the world's largest and highest energy particle collider. Now, basically what they're doing is they're trying to separate elements from each other by using a particle collider, and they're trying to find and isolate something called the God particle or the Higgs boson particle.
If this exists, as we seem to be getting closer to understanding it does, what would that do? What would that mean?
It may mean we'd be able to unlock limitless energy. Let me just put it that way. It may be that we would understand the next secret of the universe.
Now, let me just say that this stuff is very complicated, and of course, I don't have advanced degrees in science, so I could not speak about the very particulars of all this. But I wanted to give it to you this way. Anytime you see somebody saying that they're practicing quantum physics, they're actually practicing the Kabbalah, which is a form of Jewish witchcraft.
First made the correlations between Kabbalah and science, I was stunned. I couldn't believe that the Kabbalists could derive these truths without really knowing any mathematics or physics. They knew things about the universe that took us till now to discover.
We do know that Isaac Newton had access to certain mystical texts. Certain texts of the Kabbalah, all the things that could destroy string theory, all the things that do destroy every rival theory to string theory, they are all eliminated in precisely 10 and 26 dimensions. These dimensions are magic. We physicists don't know where these dimensions come from. It's rather amazing, this uncanny reflection of some of the most advanced cosmology coming from our satellites, coming from our atom smashers, coming from our blackboards, that are mirrored in the Zohar and ancient Kabbalistic texts.
So just like the alchemists were doing procedures where they were trying to isolate energy force from elements, that's exactly what they're doing at CERN. It's just with more modern technology and a lot more of a budget behind it. That's the only difference.
This is the video where I get into the essence of CERN. It's the most advanced and expensive scientific lab on Earth, and it's used to study Particles. It's the most fundamental question. It's the one we all asked when we were kids. What are we all made up of? What are the fundamental particles that make up everything in the universe? Particles are like little hills in the quantum fields. They're actually vibrations in the field, which kind of starts to make it clear on how a particle can act like a wave.
Another thing that they're trying to explore today in science is something called black matter. Another word for it is dark matter. And basically what they say is that dark matter is basically called dark because it doesn't appear to interact with any electromagnetic field. And the reason that a lot of people surmise that it is difficult to detect is that because it really is a spiritual thing in nature. This is a spiritual force that they're calling black matter or dark matter. Another example of this is something called orgone energy, which in the 1930s there was a man named Wilhelm Reich. And Wilhelm Reich discovered that orgone energy was basically a massless, omnipresent substance that was very similar to the ether that the alchemicalists talked about. He actually called it the luminiferous ether. And he claimed this existed in people, but it was called orgone energy. And Reich actually argued that the reason people get cancer is because their orgone energy is basically out of balance or they're lacking it. And in 1942, he created the Orgone Institute. One of the inventions that he created was called an orgone energy accumulator, which he believed he could basically just absorb orgone energy out of the air and put it into some sort of charger or something and actually give that to people, somehow inject that into people's bodies, and it will cure their health. Now, Reich actually based his research off of Freud's research, which Freud actually called this, instead of calling it orgone, he called it the human libido, which was Freud's example of an ether energy, a spirit energy, a life force energy. And Freud, of course, called it the libido, and Reich took that and called it orgone energy. And he claimed that he could actually measure it. Now, where Reich and Freud actually got in trouble with the Western world during their time was that they actually equated this energy with a sexual energy in the human body.
Reich developed what he called a science of orgonomics based on the positing of a fundamental sexual life energy animating the whole universe, which he called orgone energy.
They actually were doing sexual acts in order to measure the increase of orgone energy in the human body. And of course, that didn't go over very well. That actually became a big scandal in their lives. And ultimately, the Western world rejected what they were saying at the time. William Burroughs was an American writer, postmodern author, and occultist. Burroughs was a believer in the idea of something called orgone energy. Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of Nirvana, is pictured inside the personal orgone accumulator of William S. Burroughs. And I really think probably the most famous example of somebody looking into this energy force was a man named Nikola Tesla. And of course, Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American inventor, and he actually was well known for working with Edison. He invented the AC-DC current, and actually the list goes on and on of the things that Nikola Tesla invented. It's actually quite prolific what he contributed to modern inventions and modern science. But Nikola Tesla was obsessed with something called free energy. He believed that you could create devices that would actually absorb energy right out of the air, much like Wilhelm Reich did. And you could actually use that to power light bulbs or other devices. That was the man's life work. Well, the dirty secret about Nikola Tesla is that Nikola Tesla was not a scientist. Nikola Tesla was actually an occultist. And this free energy that he was trying to use was actually the spirit energy that the Bible actually talks about. I mean, the man was into geometria, where he talked about 3, 6, and 9 were the secret to understanding the universe. Now, Tesla actually was raised an Orthodox Christian, but obviously he renounced his faith. And later on in life, he actually became a big proponent for eugenics. And then also he was a big part of gender equality, basically feminism. And he actually was quoted as saying that the future would be run by women, and he called them queen bees. This struggle of the human female towards sex equality will end in a new sex order, with the female as superior. The modern woman, who anticipates in merely superficial phenomenon the advancement of her sex, is but a surface symptom of something deeper and more potent fermenting in the bosom of the race. The acquisition of new fields of endeavor by women, their gradual usurpation of leadership, will dull and finally dissipate feminine sensibilities, will choke the maternal instinct, so that marriage and motherhood may become abhorrent, and human civilization draw closer and closer to the perfect civilization of the bee. Nikola Tesla.
Now, Tesla actually died when he was 86 years old, which means he died in the 1940s, sometime around the time of World War II. And he actually claimed towards the end of his life that he actually invented a particle beam weapon known as the death ray, which operated off of frequency and vibration. And it is a documented fact that around the time of his death, that the government actually swooped in and took all of his research by force. And to this day, nobody knows where that research is. It's one of the things that is actually lost to history.
Upon the death of Tesla, the FBI seized his work, which resulted in decades of controversy. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover dealt with dozens of letters over the years demanding the papers be made public. The Tesla papers were given to a certain MIT engineer to evaluate. The FBI released a statement that it was the opinion of the engineer that the Tesla papers contained nothing, quote, of significant value to this country. The name of the MIT engineer who evaluated the Tesla papers was John G. Trump, uncle of President Donald Trump.
Now, a lot of people will say, well, what was Tesla into? Nobody really knows the specifics, but I think it's safe to say at this point that Tesla had probably broken into the third realm to some degree and was using metaphysical or occultic powers to manipulate the modern world. And it's because Tesla, although he was given credit as being a scientist, Tesla actually was an occultist.